She's a doctor.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dovec, and she's a dietitian.
Hey, I'm Hannah Schuyler, and together we are the Doctor Dietitian Collab.
Today we are talking about that most uncomfortable feeling, standing on the edge, doubts, uncertainties, fears. What if you fall? But what if you fly? Hannah, today we are talking all things about the uncertainty you may experience before doing something life-changing like having bariatric surgery.
Yeah, it is a huge decision. And I think that we probably have more of these in our lives than we kind of realize, like if you really think about it, but but then like it's not an everyday thing. So they all feel so big, and they are big.
Oh, yeah. And just think about the decision to get married, the decision to have a child, the decision, like there's typical kind of milestones of life.
Yeah.
Buy a house, buy a car, change a job, get a job.
Yeah.
What are you going to major in?
Move
What are you going
across
to be
the
when you grow up?
country.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we've done all those things.
You do
We
those
both have
things.
done all of those things.
Absolutely. But then there is this one that comes down to you, your health, and having surgery. And this is obviously a huge concern. I don't think there's a day that goes by, including the weekends, that I don't talk to people about this standing on the edge of a cliff phenomenon. I talk so much about it. They don't want to make a mistake.
I always ask people, like, so are you, especially when I have a lot of visits with somebody, it'll be like, all right, so how are we feeling? What's going on? And well, I'm so nervous, but I'm so excited, but I'm so nervous. And it's like they almost can't decide like how they feel in that, especially if it's like, or somebody's gone through the process really quickly. They're self-pay, like they're not dealing with their insurance or whatever, or just everything has gone so right that they're moving really quickly. And they're like, sometimes I think that's easier though, because you just don't have that time to psych yourself out.
Oh, I think it's definitely easier. Like I say, listen, again, we're going to keep using this kind of thought of standing on the edge of a cliff and never quite feeling ready to jump. In fact, the longer you look, the more you start to like make the excuses or make the laundry list of why it's not going to work. And people get fixated on like very minute details of something that could go wrong. And I'm like, wow, well, and we're going to talk a lot about that on this episode about some of the things that are the negative side of it that people say. We're going to kind of do a Mythbusters, like break down the misconceptions to allow people to know that, yes, this is a big decision. And it's kind of crazy that we are at the center of helping people with this major decision in their lives.
And I think, one thing, we never want to like minimize somebody's concerns on these because like it sometimes feels really minute to us who sees these things every day, but like for that person, it's a very legitimate concern, and it's not that they're not valid, but we, I think, can look at it from a different perspective. It's kind of like when people talk about the sleeve versus the bypass, and they're like, well, the bypass is just so much more complicated and it's so much more invasive. Like these are the words that people use. And I was like, to you, yes, it's very much more complicated. And even to me, it's more complicated because I don't perform this, but I was like, but to the surgeons, it's routine. Like, so yes, and technically it's more complex in that sense, but like for them, it's not. And so we have just this like unique perspective of like, we see a lot of this stuff. And so again, it's not to minimize, but it's hopefully to help kind of assuage some of those fears from our perspective.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we have to I constantly just keep telling myself, you're right. This is the first time they're ever going to hear this information and hear the nuances of the procedures. And, you always want to make sure that people feel heard and that they can articulate their why and their struggles and their story and their goals so that you can help them to achieve them in a way that they really respond to. But it is something that is routine for us in all the best ways. You want our jobs and our lives to be boring and to be kind of monotonous. Like I do this all day, every day. And, today I already did 4 bypasses today, and didn't really think much I don't even think much of that, but I guess that would be weird for somebody else to hear like,
right,
oh,
exactly.
you were doing surgery. It's weird.
It's like good. I've told people that I'm like, I was like, in the best way, Dr. Dovec could give a lecture while she does a bypass. And it's not because you're not paying attention, but it's just because you know what you're doing and you've done it so many times that it's that muscle memory.
Absolutely.
But yes, for somebody on the outside looking in, or they watch our video with the bypass week or even the sleeve week, and it's like, what's that? Well, I don't even know what that organ is. Or you're like pointing and you're like, well, that's obviously the omentum. And we're like, what's the omentum? So I think that you're right. We do have to kind of always remember and bring ourselves back to like, it's routine on our end. It's brand new on somebody else, on the other party. And so kind of just, again, we just want to be here to connect those two viewpoints.
Absolutely. And before we kind of get into all of the things that are surgery and the decision that this is, and all of, again, the concerns that you may bring up that, as you said, they're very valid. And we hope that we can break those down and make you feel more comfortable with this. I'm going to ask you first, Hannah, what would you say was the most major decision that you ever made in your life? And what was the one that you would say, which is like a tough decision, whether it worked out great or didn't? Like, what was that process like for you? And what was that decision? If you want to share, I don't know how personal it is.
No, I'll share. So probably the biggest one is having a kid. But that was a decision that I never thought, like, it really wasn't like an option for me. Like, I always have wanted to have a kid. So I never really felt like it was that, like, having it was just felt natural to me. So in my life, that's probably the biggest one, but it didn't really feel like I was standing on the edge. It was like, okay, now it's time to do this thing that I've always kind of planned on doing. The one that probably had the biggest impact and was really the hardest for me to make was the decision to not pursue medicine. So when I was in college, I was pre-med all 4 years.
Okay.
I was on the executive board of pre-med AMSA. I was all in, but by my senior year, I wasn't like, I was obviously friends with a bunch of people who were also pre-med because we were in these groups together, we're in class together, all of this stuff. And I hadn't started doing MCAT studying. I hadn't started I had looked at schools, like I had done the fairs and stuff like that, but like hadn't really put it into serious consideration. I was kind of like, well, I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to figure out, I got to take some time. I just wasn't as dedicated as a lot of my peers were to it. And I think I had waffled a long time, probably longer than I ever cared to admit, that I didn't this just wasn't the path for me. And so it really wasn't until like my senior year of college that I was like, I don't think that being a doctor is what I wanted, what I'm going to do. Cause I think at that point I was like, this is just not the lifestyle trajectory that I want more than anything. I was like, I don't really want to be in school for ever. And I don't want to be starting a career in my 30s, potentially.
Yeah.
So I would say that was probably the one. I think it has worked out well for me. I mean, obviously it's gotten me where I am. It led me to, going to live in New Orleans and it led me to be a dietitian. I lived in New Orleans and then I moved all around. Like, it's brought me a lot of different places. It's brought me here. So I think, do I think I could have done it? And looking back, if I could go back now in my 30s and talk to my, 20-year-old self and say, hey, if we look at this, that, and the other, maybe could still be the pathway for us. But I don't think I would. I don't think I would go back and change that. Sometimes people do still call me Dr. Schuyler, and I'm like, oh, it feels kind of good.
Well, yeah, we just roll with it. And yeah, that's perfect. But I mean, I think you're so incredibly skilled. I 100% know with all of my being, if you wanted to be a doctor, you could be a doctor. There's no two ways about it. You're not saying that, but it's interesting, like how every single day's decisions impact your life. And if you didn't do that, you wouldn't have met your husband. You wouldn't have Elena specifically. There's like a movie that's like, there's really
so
profound
many different things. Yeah. When you,
that
butterfly effect.
Yes.
really talk about. So what would be yours?
Oh my gosh.
Anything you want to share?
I know, I definitely do. I would say two, I'm going to say three very quickly. The first one was the decision to, I always knew I wanted to be a doctor. I was groomed that way. My parents were pharmacists. You kind of know the background on this. They always told me, like, you could be the doctor. And I thought, in my town, what do I know? I know pediatrician. So I thought I was going to be a pediatrician, which, if you really know me, like, it's like every branch of medicine has its own personality. So I was going to ask you, like, I wonder what you would do. I don't think you'd be a surgeon.
No, well, I think probably women's health,
Yeah.
OBGYN, which
I could
so
see you
surgeon in that
totally doing
sense.
that.
Yeah. So some surgery, but not like general.
Yes. You're like my dear friend Andrea, who's an OBGYN. You're just like her. You would be an amazing OBGYN. Amazing.
I did actually look into a couple of years ago into midwifery, like going back and doing like advanced
Really?
nursing. But
That's
I
a
would have had
rough
to
life,
do,
girl.
well, yeah. Again, it didn't happen because again, I would have then had to go back to school for probably like 4 years or something.
Yeah. And no, no,
Yeah.
no, no. Yeah. So interesting. Yeah, everything has its own personality. And where I went to medical school was in West Virginia. Everybody's groomed to do primary care. And I loved it. It was Marshall University. I owe a lot to them. And they accepted me, and I love the opportunity. Finally, your third year, you do rotations, you do all these different types of specialty. I started off with internal medicine, kind of like a hospitalist, rounding on the floors. I liked it. I just was happy to be talking to real people and not like reading about mitochondria, or all the scientific type of stuff. Oh no, I don't know. So then I ended up going, and my second rotation was OBGYN, and I'm like, oh man, I really like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I again went to a place where no one went into general surgery, to the point where, fast forward, I was on the general surgery rotation, and it's because it was brutal. Like, these residents were just, they lived there. It was a horrible thing. It was a bunch of guys. It was like one of the only trauma centers in the state of West Virginia. And because of that, like, that's the example you see, and you're like, I don't want to do this. And ultimately, I was like, there's something about it. There's something about this. This is like such a magnetic pull. And that's how I ultimately got into bariatrics. I saw one rotation. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. But I decided to go for it. And I had to go through general surgery, and I cried and I cried and I cried over that decision. I did feel like I was on the edge of a cliff, because I felt like, this is a huge time. You're about to go in 5 years of like horrible circumstances of sleepless nights and just brutal training, and just the preparedness for the OR, and you're learning how to do this skill set because people's lives are in your hands. Like, do you want this responsibility? Like, do you want this for the rest of your life? And you're standing there, and they're like, there's something about it. I don't know why. I'll always regret it if I don't do it. And when the pull is greater than kind of the pull back, you just kind of jump and go for it. Yeah. And I will tell you that when I was in those 5 years doing a lot of things that were not bariatrics, again, like trauma and breast and all the other types of specialties we have to do within surgery, I was really like, I hate this. But I always knew that bariatrics was the light at the end. And I'm so thankful for myself for blacking out years, a decade of my life to get to this point. But
right.
No, it was all worth it. The second was marrying Aaron. And the night before, I had my first and only full-blown panic attack. Like, couldn't breathe, heart was racing. I'm like, I don't like the finality of this. Like, I just feel like when he proposed, I was absolutely certain, yes, I will marry you. But then, like, that moment before I walked down the aisle, like, I was one of those like runaway brides. Like, I was like, I can't do this.
Julia Roberts here.
I felt like it. Yeah. And then on October 3rd, 2024 here, we will be celebrating 15 years of marriage. So I'm still okay. I'm okay. I've calmed down. I don't have as much anxiety about it. And then the third thing
only took 15 years.
Took 15 years. I've calmed down somewhat. You can hear my speech. I'm talking faster and faster. So there's probably still a little something there. And then finally, it's kind of crazy. You would think that this would be my first answer, but everybody kind of knows this. The surgery center, if you're listening, The surgery center cost, I took out a $13 million loan. And I'm the sole owner of it at this time. And I went through a lot of thoughts and my gosh, like even just like modeling of how this looks in terms of, do you go and get an angel investor or a venture capitalist or an existing surgery center management company or a hospital or anybody or anything to give you money and give ownership, or other surgeons, and go in with this and try to do it. And that may still, of course, very well come down the pipeline, and I hope it does. But it is one of those things where you're like, I don't know. Like, I'm on the edge, but I know that this, I'm not going to fall, I'm going to fly. Like, I just knew it. And well, I'm still in the fall, so I'm hoping that I will start to fly here soon.
Parachute's going to open soon.
Yeah, so that's
or
why.
You're like, one of those like bat wing things that people fly with. Have you seen those where you jump off a cliff and like then they put their arms out and they're like,
that's what I'm hoping. I hope that it feels fun and the breeze is really like euphoric and I feel like this sensation of joy. Just not feeling that at this moment. But that's why I decided that we needed to talk about this in the podcast, because I'm like, man, there are so many parallels to all of these decisions that you make and how you spend your life, but also what you do with your body and how will eating be like in all of these things. So let's dive into you, the patient standing on the edge, and some of the doubts. So I want to start off and say, acknowledge that everybody who's thinking about this has tried so many things. They've tried the diets, the exercise, the medications, they've done the crazy, the dangerous, all the things in between. They kind of feel like they know their bodies and what has worked and what doesn't. Some things are just more frustrating than others. But I think one of the biggest questions we get is this question that, what if this fails too? What if this fails too? So how often do you see somebody, quote, fail after bariatric surgery? And how would you define failure after bariatric surgery?
Yeah, I think that part is like the real thing. Like, how do you define failure? I would say for most people, obviously weight loss is going to be like the number one determination of their like, quote, success. And in that sense, like, no, we don't see people that don't lose weight after weight loss surgery. I think where we see people start to have struggles is either they don't get to where they expect that they're going to get. And sometimes it's managing expectations in that sense. Or they hit maintenance before they're ready, and there's still some room to, or we do expect to see maybe that they would have success, more weight loss, right? And then, far out, we see people that start to get, put some weight back on, which might make them feel like they have failed. But I think if we can kind of look at that, again, that definition of failure versus success is like, I would say, is it a failure if it's permanent? Like, okay, so maybe you gain some weight back, but does that mean there's nothing else we can do? Like, no, we can absolutely intervene. Is it the normal amount of weight that we expect to cut? Like, did you gain 5 pounds back? And that's kind of, again, expected. Like, I wouldn't call that a failure. You're just like, you're just living life now at this point, and then I always like to try to bring it back to the other successes and the other big wins after surgery. Is your diabetes resolved? Is your acid reflux resolved? Is your high cholesterol, your blood pressure, like, are you less achy? Are you going on hikes? Are you flying? Are you playing with your grandkids? Are you running around your kid's soccer field with them, like at practice, like whatever those other things might be? And okay, maybe the number on the scale you feel like is a failure, but like, can we not look at all these other beautiful, amazing things that have happened and measure those as successful outcomes?
Oh, couldn't agree more. And one of the times you made me giggle so hard, you forgot the most important reason to have bariatric surgery. In all the amazing things you listed, you forgot the most important one, Hannah.
Is it the dimples?
It's the dimple. It's the dimple. My friends, if you have a dimple, that's so cute in general. And then when you lose weight, your dimple deepens. And when we were at the Body by Bariatric Summer Bash, I was like, oh my God, look at your dimple. That's the best thing. And you're like, not her diabetes being on at this point. I'm like, just quiet. It was so funny. But it's true. I know. Just think, when you're on the edge of the cliff, think about how cute your dimples will look.
That's all you got to think about. Jump.
I know. Just jump. Just jump. Just think about those dimples and close your eyes, and here we go. So I think another thing is just like the unknown. Like fear of the unknown is frightening. Me wanting to go into surgery, like, will I be able to be a mom or get married, or am I going to be up all night every night for the rest of my life and think, well, I'm so far into this thing. I put so much money and time. I don't have any other skill set, so I better keep going. And then there's that point of no return. And when you wake up, it's on. It's on. And I think, in the beginning, it's very structured. And I think sometimes people like that. Some people don't like that feeling of like, you must do these. And it just feels like you're, but the diet's a big thing. And obviously that's your expertise. What will eating be like is one of the biggest questions. And I think why people really desperately want to see you beforehand, and especially see you after, actually, and talk about that.
Yeah. I think that's definitely because we've talked about this before, but like eating is just such an integral part of every day of our lives. And we all have an opinion on food. We all know our own preferences. We all know yes, no to whatever it might be. And, the last episode we did was about emotional eating. So if you haven't listened to that one, we dive into a lot of these ideas, but we all do have that emotional connection to food in some way or shape or form. And so that is such a big thing for people. And what I always like to remind people is that, yes, there is that initial, very rigid, kind of restricted, we're putting you on this kind of low carb diet. You're so focused on your protein, your water, like these, just like kind of meeting these like minimum requirements, basically. But that's not forever. Yes, you will always need to focus on getting your protein and your fluid in, but it's going to become easier with time because it will become a habit, and that's just how you're going to live your life. But B, it's like you eventually will get to reintegrate some of the foods that you enjoy. I always say, like, there's very few things that I say are off limits forever after bariatric surgery. And really, truthfully, to me, those things would be, for the most part, like sugar sweetened beverages. I think they just don't do anybody with surgery any good. Because like, especially if you had bypass, like they're just going to make you feel really crummy, pretty much guaranteed. So that's just my one thing. But for the most part, like, we have people asking, oh my God, am I never going to eat rice again? Am I never going to have potatoes again? Can I not eat cake on my birthday? I bring that one up a lot. And it's like, no, you can definitely figure out, how do we make this work for you? And again, when we've left that kind of restrictive period, we figure out how to do those things. So I always like to remind people, like, this is a temporary state. There's kind of these phases that we go through, and they're temporary, and we move through them. And then we get you into this longest phase, which is maintenance.
Absolutely. And even before maintenance, there's the honeymoon. So you can kind of enjoy it. Like, this is the greatest decision. And then the maintenance can also bring in some doubts. And we talk about grief and how we get into this maintenance and acceptance and just a new habits and a new way of life. And sometimes we fall back and we just keep plowing forward, and that's how we go. But your feelings are undoubtedly validated, and we see you, and we get it because we hear people all the time, and we're really empathetic to major life decisions. Like, change is hard. And I talk so much about the stages of change and the pre-contemplation to contemplating it, and then really preparing for it, and then seeking action, and then what? And it's you're always kind of on this continuum of all of those things, like we talk about a lot. So when people are trying to get ready for this, and so if you're listening, you're probably in that desperate pre-op phase, just trying to like drink out of the water hose and trying to get every little bit of information and knowledge that you can to ask other people, like, on support groups. What was it like? What does it feel like? And you're looking with like a magnifying glass of other people's experiences to help to set your own expectations up. What do you feel like, again, are the best things that people can do from a almost control standpoint, or from a preparation standpoint, so that they're the most ready for this?
I think preparation is like, that's the answer, right? And I think it's practice. So starting to practice some of these concepts. One of the things that I experience a lot when I'm meeting people pre-op, is they're not eating 3 meals a day. And I know
yes.
you've talked
Oh,
about
I'm
this.
obsessed with this. Yes,
You're
keep going
obsessed
on
with
this.
it. And people are skipping meals. They're skipping breakfast because it's busy in the morning. They're trying to get the kids out the door. They wake up, they feel kind of nauseated. They're skipping lunch because work doesn't provide them a great lunch break, or there's not good options, or they're skipping meals because they think that's going to be the answer to losing weight. And I'm going to tell you, it's not, especially women. I really think that it just is really detrimental to a lot of women to be skipping meals, um, which is most of our patients. So, and then especially when we think about after surgery, you can't get what you need with less than 3 meals a day when your portions are just so much smaller. So that's one thing that I think, if you can start to practice prior to surgery, is getting into a really consistent routine of having 3 meals a day with protein at each meal. And if you're somebody you're running out the door, you're in the car, you just like, the breakfast is oftentimes the one that's missed. Or people, again, are doing like intermittent fasting. So they're skipping that breakfast, which is honestly just another term to say you're skipping breakfast for the most part. Like a protein shake, I'm fine with that as a meal replacement, especially, again, as like almost a practice, as like a placeholder too. Like, bring a shake with you in the car on your commute to work if that's what works for you. But do something so that you're getting in 3 portions of protein at least throughout the day. So that's my first big one. So starting just like and then starting to reduce the starchy foods in your diet. It doesn't have to be all at once. You don't have to cut everything out like that. Like, just start swapping. Make your portions of your veggies bigger and your portions of your starchy foods smaller. And just over time, you'll kind of phase that out. So it doesn't have to feel like this, like this is where you can like walk down the hill and not jump off the cliff with it. On some of those things. And then I had this idea. I haven't told you about this one. I had a patient do this recently. So, we tell our patients they're going to have to take something 4 times a day. You're going to take a multivitamin and then 3 doses of calcium citrate. They have to be spread out throughout the day by at least 2 hours. And I don't really like to have people start on like the calcium, especially prior to surgery, because you just don't need it at that point. And I don't want to you have too much in your system. So,
right.
But I had a patient who was like, I really struggle with like creating habits and creating routine. And I was like, go get Tic Tacs. And I want you to start taking a Tic Tac 4 times a day.
Wow.
And so that you get into the habit. It's just taking something, or it could be any mint, but I just Tic Tacs, they're little, whatever. It's easy. And so she did. So she started taking Tic Tacs. So she takes one right when she gets up in the morning, and then she takes one at 2 of her meals, and then she takes one at dinner or bedtime, something like that. And she's like, yeah, it's working really well. I take my Tic Tacs. My daughter is like, why are you taking that? She's like, it's just a mint, but it's like medicine, basically, kind of thing. And so I was like, I thought that was pretty good. Little idea I had.
That's super clever. It's just habit formation, and makes it second nature. And you just wake up and grab it, pair it with another habit, and just it has to be part of your routine. You have to set. We talk about this in the bariatric surgery success guide, but you set a alarm on your phone, or you can use the free Baritastic app. I think that's really cool. They have alarms and whatever it takes. Hey, get in the zone with a Tic Tac. I'm here for it. Okay, yeah. I want to go back. I want to ask you a question about when you started talking about, and I completely agree, the 3 meals a day is just absolutely critically important. You should do that immediately, starting now if you're listening. But why do you feel like it's worse for women than men to skip meals?
There's just been some research on the hormonal impact of it. So, and the other thing is, a lot of research is only done on men. And so we just don't have good, intermittent fasting has been so big in the past 5-ish years, probably a little bit longer than that. And everything, all the studies were just done on men. And it just doesn't take into account this hormonal impact on women. So I'm not going to sit and say I know every single piece of research on it, but from some people that I know that are in that space, like they're just like, it just isn't great.
I agree. And I think I've talked a lot about the differences in eating patterns between men and women. Men typically will sit down and eat a lot, and women will be they won't do that. They're more on the go, but they'll grab a bite, they nibble, they pick their graze, they're all of that stuff, little things here and there. So you're never really satisfied and filled up. You're just constantly in this steady state of just popping something and just going for it. It's funny, I work a lot of different hospitals and facilities, and there's men and women that are in the break room, and you see what other people eat. And it's funny, I don't know if like women typically eat very small amounts. And if they even bring something, they'll heat it up, it'll be very little. Men will have like full course spreads. Like the other day, this one guy we work with, I mean, he just had so much quantity of food. I was kind of shocked by it. The amount he was just eating for lunch.
You should see what Virgilio's lunch bag is. I mean, he has like usually like multiple pieces of fruit. He has like a meal. He's got a cheese stick and a yogurt. And there's probably something else. Like there's so much. And some days he was like, I finished all my food by 11:30 today. So then I went and got something because I was hungry in the afternoon. That man eats.
He does eat. He's really thin, and that just tells you got to eat more to lose more, my friends. Right. He's a perfect example. He ate a lot of the meal and then he was kind of done with it until the next mini meal he did.
And he'll eat a lot, but he also is good. I will give him credit. He'll stop. Like I'll be like, oh, there's more, in the kitchen. He's like, good. I ate enough. I'm like, okay. Like, good job, you listening to your fullness cues.
Your physical hunger is satisfied, so therefore you don't eat anymore.
But he's a butthead when he's hungry. So,
well, yeah.
Anytime he's being like a jerk, I'm like, go eat something. Get out of here.
Go eat something. Yeah, that's perfect. If you don't dare tell a woman that, like, you're just probably hungry, go eat something. Yeah. Can you imagine? No, but there's a lot of things. We need to have a whole episode on hormones too. Like that is another thing, especially as I like entering into my mid 40s here. I'm like, I got to talk about what is happening to me on a personal level. I'll spin it for the podcast, but I'm going to do a lot of deep research. So stay tuned, our faithful listeners, for all of that.
Because and I think that will be great because that is something we experience, and we're totally off topic here, but that's fine. But I think these are the things that it's going to be good.
Yeah, I think people want to know about it. So people are very concerned with, and we have a whole episode on this, and we have a lot of thoughts on this. One of the hardest parts is worrying about what your friends and family think. And we talked a lot about the people that are supposed to support you and love you the most, but then they turn and they are not, and trying to do something this overwhelming on the edge of the cliff and all of the other feelings with it, but having someone that's kind of this negative chirp in your ear, that makes it another level of complexity that's really challenging.
Yes, it is. And I think that it's such a hard topic to kind of approach because everybody's got something different, some different reason why they're chirping in the ear, whether it's their own insecurity, whether they heard some horror story or whatever. And so, I know that that's something too that we have talked about in the past, and I know we're going to be also offering some more resources on that in the future of I think even a support group for spouses or for partners or family members or something like that can be so beneficial, because I think a lot of it is just misunderstanding and being misinformed.
Mm-hmm. It's a little bit of, and I respectfully say this, it's a little bit of ignorance. You think of it one way. You have, like you said, everybody has thoughts on diet. Everyone has thoughts on this as well. And they know best. And this is nuts. And like, why are you letting somebody talk you into this? And then you get a lot more doubts and that sort of thing. But I do think that whenever I always say, like, if you would like, if it makes it better or easier on you, I'd be more than happy to have, even with you or alone, a chat with your loved one or support system who is ever giving you these negative vibes. I'm happy to talk to them about it, because it, it makes it easier, and it's not crucial to your success. We have support groups. We do meet once a month. We do in-person meetups, all these great things. But I mean, the person you live with on the day to day are the ones that are your go-to, whether it be a parent or your spouse or partner or boyfriend or girlfriend, or even a child that might, just not understand it.
Yeah.
So we're here to help you with all of that kind of stuff. And hopefully that will alleviate some of their worry, because it just ends up being probably their fears that you're on the edge and they're also on their own ledge. And it's like, oh my gosh, when too many people are on the edge there, it's tough.
So we've talked so far, all of these have been such like things that are like deep and like really meaningful and really impactful in people's lives. But this next one is the one that I get the most concerns about. Am I going to lose my hair?
Oh,
like the most common one.
That is absolutely the most common one. People are like, I don't want to look weird. I don't want to be bald. I don't, if your hair is already thin, you might have concerns. If it's thick and that's kind of your identity, we talk about hair all the time. I get it. When I was a bleach and tone babe there for a decade, that wreaks havoc. And one day they were blow drying my hair and a lot of it just started to break off. And so I started to wear hair extensions and it really bothered me. I was really self-conscious, even though it looked pretty much the same. And then I went to highlights and I let my roots grow out. It was just like traumatizing. And I know it seems so silly, but it's not. I totally get it.
Identity thing.
But the great news is if you do, it is temporary. You lose hair every day. It might feel like a little bit more. It happens in a very short time frame, usually around 3 months post-op to around 7 to 8 months post-op. If it were to happen at all, what do you do to prevent it? You do more protein. You could potentially do biotin, and you might change your hairstyle, not the tighter styles. You might cut it shorter. You might, just do different things during that time frame. But don't worry. If it does go, it will get thick again. Takes a little while, year or two, until you're like noticeably like, oh, there's new growth. It's up at the hairline. This is bizarre. Adults aren't usually growing hair, but it will happen. It will be okay. And I don't know. I don't think that one ultimately, because I have like the crystal ball and I can see your future and I know that it's not going to be any big deal. Like, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think for some people it is a big deal. Because I think it is a lot of people's identity. And especially we know that when people struggle with obesity, like again, when we think about things that you can control, your hair oftentimes is one of those things that you can really control, because there's so many things you can do with hair, and it doesn't matter your size or your shape or your color. You can do whatever you want with your hair. So I think it can feel like a really big deal. And again, it's like not to like, I don't want us to like minimize this, those concerns, but like you said, we can see the other side of it and we can say like, this is a temporary process. And some people may take longer to get it back. And some people may not, like you said, some people don't experience any hair loss, and we can't really tell you one way or the other, if you will. And like you said, get your protein in. I think collagen is really the other probably most studied thing that has some thought behind it. Like take some collagen on top of your protein. And then it's like you said, the external things that you can do. You can do the rosemary oil treatments. You can do like medical treatments, like Rogaine type things. You can do that stuff. Like there's nothing that says you can't do that after surgery. So if you want to, throw the book at it.
You should definitely do that. We have a whole episode of the potpourri of issues that could potentially happen. But I mean, you got it, and it's kind of silly, but like even Queen Beyonce, man, I mean, she identified, you better call Becky with the good hair. I mean, like even Beyonce was identifying somebody by their hair.
Well, and now she has her own hairline. So
look who has the last laugh now.
Yeah.
There you go.
Beyonce with the good hair.
Oh yeah, always.
Because she talks about, I mean, and this is kind of something interesting that you bring up with her. It's like she talks about the struggles that she's gone with through her hair because of performing and changing the styles and doing all of these. Like and I think it really caused a lot of damage. And so again, there's things you can do to fix it.
Yeah.
We all have Beyonce hair.
Yeah, maybe we look into her product lines and that's what we're going to recommend. Forget protein. We're going straight to Beyonce's products. might work. Here's another one. Everybody worries, and we talked about kind of in the beginning failure and weight regain and that sort of thing. And I think that there's a lot of, we were doing the Project Reset sessions the other day, and there are 12 kind of like small group therapy sessions where we're teaching by Laura Graybill. I'm not teaching, I'm just a recipient, but I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Again, it's making me, I feel like a better surgeon by going through all of these really thoughtful topics. And the other day we were on there and somebody was talking and they were just getting so vulnerable, and everybody has their screen on and it's just these, small groups. And one of the patients said, I felt like I was always so worried before surgery. My biggest fear was that I would just be the statistic of just gaining the weight back. And then I find myself like standing there and eating what I shouldn't eat. And it's like, I'm just like stressed and I'm emotionally eating, I'm triggered and blah, blah, blah. We talk about that. And then the next thing you know, I just feel like, yep, on the scale, the weight's coming back. You're going to be a failure. And then that negative thoughts and negative self-talk and all of this tough stuff. And I know I spent a lot of time talking about that, but that to me is this bad cycle and this self-fulfilling prophecy, but it doesn't have to be that way. I don't know. I've said this example many, many times now, but it's really rocking me. And I want to make people feel better about this kind of, this feeling.
Yeah, I do think that it is. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a spiral. It is just, I always talk about, like people talk about they fell off the wagon or they came off the tracks or whatever. And it's like, just stop for a minute and it's okay. And then you just either you get back on the wagon or you start the train back or whatever metaphor you want to use. But it doesn't, like, you don't have to derail, you don't have to. And I think that's where people get stuck. And again, like I said, we know that some amount of weight gain in the long term is potentially, going to happen. And we have to look at how much is it and what's going on. But there's always interventions that we can do to help you if that does happen. Like there's always something that we can talk about, and whether it's lifestyle, whether we look at medications, whether we look at a revisional surgery, maybe you had a sleeve 20 years ago and it just isn't doing what it did back then. And you need to look at another option or something. But I also think that so often we think of those when those types of things happen, and they're not guaranteed to happen by any means. But we see so many people with long-term success with maintenance and all of that. But so many times people think that it's a moral failing on their part. Like because I gained weight back, I am a bad person. And I think we do this with food too. We hear a lot of people say that this food is good and this food is bad. And like in reality, food is morally neutral. There's no morality in food. And it's the same with this. Like there's not, like, you're not a bad person if you gain some weight back in the long run. You probably need some help. You probably need, again, some guidance, but I don't think doesn't mean you're a bad person. So I think that's where people can really trigger themselves in that cycle.
So true. There's just so many layers and I mean, all of you are welcome to sign up for our Project Reset or just get the support, the help, somebody that you really jive with. We talk about that a lot. Now, people worry, what if I hate this choice? But on the flip side of feeling that, you might hate where you are now, that you feel stuck and you feel like your life is kind of unfulfilled, like there's more, that you know that you're afraid, but you are also more afraid of just staying exactly where you are right now. So the flip side of this is, what if it works? What if you succeeded? What if there is more to life than you're currently living?
Yeah. I think that's it's like, what if I fail, but what if you fly? And talking about that, it's a lot of times the fear of the unknown, or it's the enemy, is what you're experiencing right now. And that's where we get stuck a lot. And sometimes you have to just recognize that there is currently an enemy, And it
Yes.
is, you probably tried everything and the endless cycles of diets and, over the counter like stimulants and like crazy exercise routines and these just unsustainable habits that are unsustainable and not working. Like that's the enemy you've been fighting this whole time. And I don't want this to frame it as bariatric surgery as the enemy, but it's kind of just that unknown thing. And so, yes, there's going to be these challenges that we've kind of touched on. And again, this is not the easy way out. And that's the other thing we always hear from people is like, oh, people say this is the easy way out. This is the easy way out. And it's really not. It's still a lot of work. So yes, there are going to be challenges that you face afterwards, but are they worse than the challenges you're facing right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what you have to look at. Life as you know it, what life could be, and you got to write the pros and the cons and almost list it out. And it's a big decision. And sometimes it's like, nope, I could just take a mental inventory of all the things that will make my life bigger and better and all the things afterwards. It's so funny how there's just such a huge spectrum of readiness that people feel in terms of mentally ready. And some people are like, I go and open up the curtain and they're like shaking and rocking and crying and so nervous. And some people are like just having a party back in the pre-op area and just like fun and excited for this. And I think everything is normal. I think everything part of those extreme ends are completely normal to feel all of these. I don't know. Think about what you're doing. So we talk a little bit about, is your yes holding you back? Is your yes sabotaging your chance for true happiness and health? And when, I'm just going to ask you for a time, was there ever a time when you felt like in your life that you were just saying yes to your comfort zone and you knew that you needed to expand and get bigger in your life or your goals, but you just felt like, I don't feel like doing it. I just want to stay where I'm at?
Probably, yeah, for sure. I think, I stayed in my last job, or not my last job, my previous like career, like when I was in dialysis, I guess that's the easiest way to say it. I did that for almost 5 years. And by the end, I was just so burnt out. But it was one of those that like part of it was I didn't really know what else I wanted to do. And I was kind of waffling, even if I wanted to stay in nutrition or if I wanted to continue in dietetics, like all of that. And so I would say I definitely stayed in that particular role. And it was cushy. I mean, it was easy. I could go in, I went in at 8:30, I was done by 4 or something like that. And I got paid decently well. And, I would like have my phone on my desk with Netflix on in the background while I did my work because like it was so routine for me that I could do my charts without thinking kind of thing. And so, it was just like, so that was probably where I was most like comfortable. And then, moving to Florida, even then I looked into continuing with my old company when I got down here as kind of just an option. But it was like, well, it'd be easy. I could just keep working in the same thing. And then probably for the best, there wasn't a good position open.
Yeah.
So
good.
Yeah,
Thank
right.
God.
So, I mean, I was trying to move up. I will say I was trying to move into a management position, but it got filled before I had contacted them. So,
Yeah. But
yeah,
I mean,
probably...
I think that there can be yeses that hold you back from, going for it, again, keeping you comfortable. And, but I love this is like, is that serving you? Like, is that making you feel like passionate about dialysis? It never has felt like that. I can't believe you lasted 5 years doing it.
Part of it was I wanted to get that 401k vested.
Oh, Jesus. That's what we're living for, the 401k. Like sometimes
no,
I'm like,
truthfully, in the end, it was that I knew I was leaving. And so it was in a holding pattern of we're moving soon. So I'm not going to try to get a new job in Chicago before I move. That was probably the last year I knew that I was leaving.
Okay. But, and then it sure did. It worked out for me. Thank goodness for all of it. Like, again, the butterfly effect. I just love all the things that have happened. And your yes can also sabotage you in many other ways. And we talk about being people pleasers. We can go on and on and on about putting everybody else first and not, I try to now, I used to say, if you were a company, if it didn't matter what you were, if you asked me to speak for something, I'd say yes. I wouldn't even like, what are the stipulations of it? If it was like, what will I get paid? Will there be expenses covered? Who is the audience? How many people will be in the audience? What is the potential? Like, is this going to build my career? Like, why am I doing this? And even after I had kids, I would still be like, well, I want to make sure that I remain relevant. I want to like all these things. But now I don't really travel at all and do that stuff at all anymore. I really don't feel like there's like a great return on the investment. And I feel like that makes me a lot happier than sitting there and traveling to some remote area and just sitting there to give this 30-minute talk and all the effort that you did it for, like, what? Maybe a connection, maybe, you never know. Like, maybe it would be a good thing, but I don't know. Sometimes I've been like, no, I'm not doing this stuff anymore.
Well, and I think when you kind of look at it as like, what is the yes, what was the yes sabotaging? Like, yeah, your happiness and things like that, but also like all the other things you can do with that time. Like you could be here working on your business plan to grow your own practice. You could be here going to Disney with your kids. You could be here doing whatever else that you want besides this, like, yeah, I'm going to do it because I feel like I should, or, it seems like a good idea. It seems like what I'm going to add it to my CV. I don't know.
Right. Like, who cares?
Or you make your yes more selective. Like, I'm sure there would be times that you're like, okay, yes, that opportunity is the one I'm going to go and speak at. And that one, I see the value and I see it's worth it to say no to all these other things so I can say yes to that. And that I know has happened too. I mean, like, you went to Australia and spoke, and I think that was something really, that was major, but it wasn't like, yeah, you're going to Omaha or something like that.
No, it's funny.
It's not just a place, but
it was so, it was something that I actually don't even know if I would have gone if it was different timing in my life. And boy, what an awesome opportunity. And they sent me pictures the other day. I think you saw it, where there was the stapler that we use in these surgeries. They were at this big international conference, which happened to be in Melbourne, Australia this year. And they had a bedazzled one, like pink bedazzled stapler. Yeah. And like, I got like sent that by so many of my Australian new buddies that were like, that is so you. And I'm like, wow. I have a connection with bariatric surgeons across the globe that think of me when they see sequins and bedazzled. Like,
wait, but do we need to get an bedazzler?
Yeah, we do, because that was really, really cool. Super cool. Oh my gosh. And then the biggest thing, the number one thing I hear, my favorite thing, it should be everyone's kind of like tagline. It is, what is your biggest regret about having surgery? And the answer is always, I wish I would have done it sooner. People regret not doing it. A million times over before they regret doing it. And I hear that all the time. The biggest what if is, what if you didn't take it?
Every couple months, I would say that one pops up on the Facebook group of like somebody who's maybe they had their initial consult, they're kind of in there, they're doing their psych evaluation and they're seeing specialists or whatever they need to do. And they're like, oh, I'm so nervous right now. Or they just got their date. That's the other time that people are like, it feels so like it's real. It's on the calendar. And they're like, who does anyone regret it? And it's literally just, I regret not doing it sooner. Like 20 comments. Yeah.
Yep.
And then
one after the next.
likes and hearts on all of those comments. Cause it's just, and then you just see everyone's pictures of like,
I was just going to say, then they put the pictures and here I am. And then they go down, there's a million comments on it, but I love those threads. I love them. I love them. That thread is very common. So yeah, I mean, it's the whole thing is like, what if you missed the opportunity to transform your life because fear held you back? And that's a heavy question you have to ask yourself. And, it's time. It's time. If you feel like it's time, if you're listening to this podcast, you made it to this point, this is your sign that this is the time to take the leap, not into the unknown, because we're here. We know what you're jumping into, but into the possibility of a life that is finally yours, my friends. Don't let fear decide your future.
Yep. What are all the things you're going to be able to say yes to? What are all the things you're going to be able to do? And you have a support system. I think that's really the biggest thing. Like you said, we get it. It's unknown to you, but it is very known to us. It is very known to our team. It's very known to any surgeon and their team. I mean, regardless of if you come to us or not, like, you are going to have people that know this experience intimately and know this experience. They do it day in and day out. And obviously we're the best, but you know, that you're going to have that ongoing support, and it's going to be great.
Yes, it is. We know what's waiting on the other side. So let's fly together. We'll hold each other's hands. We gotcha.
We're going to jump.
We're going to jump. All the feels are worth feeling, and the journey is an amazing one. So I hope you're ready. I think it's really, really exciting for you. And we hope that you would connect with us and we can walk you through it, or just have a virtual consult and talk to you about your different options. Maybe surgery isn't the best thing for you at this time in your life, or maybe it's not the best option for whatever reason, but we would love to talk through all of that so that you can achieve your goals. Life's short.
Let's do it.
Yep. Well,
achieve those goals.
Hannah, take us out. I think hopefully we broke down those doubts and fears, and everyone's running through walls as we speak.
They want to find us. So you can find us if you're trying to get a consult, get on our schedule, go to bodybybariatrics.com, click get started now. We'd be happy to take care of you. If you want to find us on social media, we're at Dr. Dovec, at hannahschuyler.rd, at Dr. X Dietitian, at Body by Bariatrics. All of those are on Instagram. Find us, obviously, or listen to us wherever your favorite podcast is. If you want to see some of these surgeries that I mentioned earlier, you can check us out on YouTube. We do have videos of a sleeve, of a bypass, and of the sleeve to bypass revision. So those are really cool to watch, especially if you're like, I just don't understand this. Like, check it out. You'll get a better understanding of what the actual surgery looks like. It's not gross. It's not, I mean, some people think it's gross, but it's really not that bad, I promise. But check it out, and obviously keep listening to the podcast, and we'll have new episodes for you soon.
Sounds great. All right, Hannah, hold my hand. Let's jump. Let's do it.
Let's jump.
All right. Bye, guys. Have a great day.
Bye.